How many of you guys here like anime? Hypers in chat, if you love some anime in your life. If you love to sit down and watch anime. Well, I think you could consider me a longtime anime fan. Someone who's watched anime since I was but a young boy. My favorite being, of course, the world-famous American anime King of the Hill. About a man named Hank Hill from Arlen, Texas, who sells propane and propane accessories and loves to grill. As you can imagine, considering it's what his job is about, is selling natural gas used in grilling primarily. Or at least advertised for use in grilling. And as you can imagine, this is a very beloved... Sorry, do you prefer the manga, Bobby? I understand. Anyway, King of the Hill, very, very popular animated show. And it's been off the air for a long time, but it's had a massive cultural impact. And the other day, I was talking about the fact that soon we're getting a King of the Hill revival show. It's going to be not rebooted, but revived. It's going to pick back up supposedly like 12 or 7 or so years after the original show. And I remember talking about how I was worried that the show would fall into the tendencies of modern conservative politics, in that it would be really uncreative, repetitive with its takes and commentary, and worst of all, less funny than the original because of it, right? Now, I'm not saying I lack, faith in Mike Judge and the people behind King of the Hill or anything. It's just that King of the Hill was always a conservative show. To be very clear, like, Mike Judge is a conservative. The show was always a conservative show, but at the same time, it took positions that were far less radical for a conservative person or media, even back then. It was considered, like, not super far right with its politics. But to be very clear here, Hank Hill is a conservative, a Republican voter. The Hill family broadly has conservative values. The show, generally speaking, values conservative values and uses, like, hippies and, at the time, what was considered stereotypical progressives as the butt of jokes. And so, the big question arose, like, years ago, naturally, would Hank Hill vote for Trump? And an animation YouTuber named Johnny Two Cellos apparently made a video about this, and I got it recommended to me by some fans in my Discord server asking that I react to it. And I figure, I'm sure the video is good on its own, but maybe me as a politics YouTuber who gets a little deeper into this stuff might be able to add some extra commentary to this, might be able to add some things. I actually haven't seen this video yet, and the title is No, Hank Would Not Vote for Trump, and I happen to agree. I don't think he would. The question is, do the show creators agree with that? I'm not entirely sure. I'm excited to see the revival and how it turns out, whether or not it ends up falling into, like, the Dave Chappelle pit trap or pitfall of, like, riding off of name recognition and, man, these trans people, they identify as basketballs and cars now. It's like, okay, yeah, trans people are identifying as inanimate objects. You creative humor from the literal comedic genius, Dave Chappelle. It's like, we know you can do better. We know you can do better. So, we worry that I worry that the revival will fall into that same problem, but Johnny Two Cellos seems confident that Hank Hill would not be the type of, like, modern conservative that we think of now. So let's watch this video and see if it holds up even after 4 years, because it is itself a little bit old at this point, this video. I think the video predates any news about an oncoming revival for the show too, so there's a lot even I can add to the situation, like, separate from politics too. So let's take a look at this video. Regardless, I'm excited to watch it because it should be pretty funny, but let's see. Yeah, Dale Gribble would have definitely voted for Trump. Yeah, 100% Dale would have voted for Trump, yeah.
Previously on King of the Hill.
All right, here we go.
The system's broke, Hank. The election baby has peed in the bathwater.
So you're voting for the other fella?
I don't know.
This
So this
discourse
past
seems
week,
to have
there's been a
started
bunch of
with a tweet.
discourse on Twitter about fictional characters that would vote for Trump. Huge shout out to this person who tweeted the same copy-pasted response on like a dozen tweets about it. This is super normal and
Very cool.
so anyways, like 15,000 people liked the tweet.
Yeah, the concern about whether or not a fictional character would vote for Trump on the surface does seem really dumb, but on the other hand, it's like, well, no, Hank Hill is the main character of an extremely popular American TV show, and American politics are really important, and so the idea that an influential fictional character would hold a set of beliefs is actually kind of important if you're someone who cares about politics. Like, it is kind of important, yeah, to a degree. Obviously, it's a little silly on its face, but when you think about it for a second, it's like, okay, I can see how someone who's, like, politically engaged would be, like, concerned about the possibility of, like, say, a revival coming out where Hank Hill is, like, openly a Trump supporter, right? And it's presented in a good way, not a negative way. That would be concerning for someone involved in politics from a left-wing perspective, for sure.
Tweet suggesting Hank Hill would be a Trumper.
That makes a lot of sense. A lot of nonsense.
I think the idea that Hank would support someone like Donald Trump completely misses the nuances of the character. But let's really dive into it.
I feel like Hank would have bought at the news of either... I think Trump would have lost Hank Hill when Trump said, I could shoot somebody in the middle of Times Square and no one would care. People would still vote for me. When he bragged about that, I feel like that would have been when Trump lost Hank's vote, or the possibility of Hank's vote. J6 would have been like a long since final straw, in my opinion. But like, Hank's a very prude guy, you know? Like, Hank is that sort of classic, like, Romney-style conservative, I want to say. I almost want to say, like, Hank, if the creators of the show haven't fallen into the anti-woke, like, populist pro-Trump hole, and they write the character consistently, modern Hank Hill in this reboot would not support Trump. He would be disgusted by him. He would be like a never-Trumper Republican, like in line with Romney. You know what I mean? Yeah, Dale Gribble would be a full-on Trump-supporting QAnoner, which they should do, because that would be fully in character for him. But it would be a massive departure from Hank's character to support Trump. Like, the creators would have to give up on the integrity of their character writing to signal support for Trump that they personally have for the show to go that way, I feel. Because Hank hates the crudeness and the open, proud immorality that Trump represents. You know, I think Hank would be distressed at the current state of the Republican Party as a whole.
Because I actually think this is kind of a pretty great jumping off point for a little character study on Hank Hill. And I've been looking for an excuse to talk about King of the Hills for years. King of the Hills? King of the Hills. King of the Hill for years. So let's jump into it. Yes, Hank, definitely a conservative. But the show has also gone out of its way to show that Hank has great respect for many Democrats as well. His dog is named Ladybird after President Lyndon B. Johnson's wife. He expressed great admiration for former Governor Ann Richards, who guest starred in an episode.
Hank also, to a degree, comes off as a somewhat politically disconnected patriot. Like, Hank's the kind of guy who would, like, piss his pants with excitement to meet a Republican or Democrat president. He would just be excited about the premise of meeting the president and getting to shake their hand. Like, he's that kind of guy. He is the median voter. Yeah. He's actually a really good representation of the median voter in that way.
This was Hank's reaction to meeting President Jimmy Carter.
You must be Hank.
Well, there you go.
You ran our country.
Well, there you go. I was literally thinking of this example, and he plays the clip. I haven't seen this video for, like, a small reminder, so my King of the Hill knowledge is brushed up clearly, because I remember the bit where he met Jimmy Carter.
America.
Hank does reminisce fondly about voting for Reagan.
I miss voting for that man.
And he does have a clear distaste for people like Bill Clinton. But he shows respect for members.
I think for the same reason that he hates Bill Clinton, he would hate Trump though, right? Like, the sex scandal stuff with Clinton is a big reason why, like Hank would feel so like icked out by him, among other reasons too, like political disagreements and stuff. But like with what we know about Trump now, I feel like for it to be consistent, Hank would have to be like far more disgusted by the things that Trump has bragged about, much less the things he's been accused of. No, Zan, you keep guessing the vids, you have future sight? Maybe.
Of both parties. And I think what this comes down to is one of the most interesting aspects of Hank Hill as a character. The most important thing to Hank Hill is integrity. Hank respects Ann Richards
Which
and
Trump
Jimmy Carter
lacks.
because they have integrity in his eyes. For the 2000 election, we saw that Hank was a strong supporter of George W. Bush, partly because he agreed with his politics, and partly because Hank strongly believes in folks from his home state of Texas.
That guy did 9/11.
Even with his full support behind W, Hank found one major issue with the candidate.
Oh my God.
He had a weak handshake.
Handshake. It's limp.
Hank had a full-on crisis over voting for a man with a limp handshake.
This is why I love King of the Hill so much. When they do get into politics, it always ends up being some just hysterical premise, like Hank Hill having an existential crisis over the guy he plans to vote for having a limp handshake, because he's the kind of guy who considers a firm handshake to be like a window into a man's soul and character. It's the comedy and how trivial Hank's hyper masculine, hyper traditional standards are.
This seemingly
To a degree, the show even makes fun of a relatively milquetoast conservative in the case of Hank. So who knows? Maybe my worries about the reboot are very unfounded. I'm curious to see what it ends up being.
very small thing to Hank was telling of Bush's character. Strength of character is more important to Hank than policy. And regardless of policy agreement, Hank would not vote for someone whose character he calls into question. When it comes to integrity, there are certain things that Hank holds dear. For one, Hank would not be running to vote for a billionaire Yankee. This was Hank's reaction to learning
From
he
New
was
York.
actually born in New York.
From New York. That's the nail in the coffin alone. The second Hank finds out Trump's from New York, it's over. No universe, in no universe would Hank ever support a New Yorker.
After thinking he'd been born in Texas for his entire life.
Place of birth. New York, New York.
Whoa!
Hank is not fond of these types of city folk, and ultimately it comes down to
such
his
a good
own
episode.
assumptions about their integrity. Now, I could talk for days about the president's lack of integrity, but I think there's only a couple things we need to talk about in relation to Hank Hill.
Trump steaks are the best you can give. And believe me, I understand steaks. It's my favorite food.
Hank Hill
You know, to be fair, steak is my favorite food too.
is serious about grilling meat. Steaks are important to Hank, and there's one major steak-related red flag that sets off Hank's lack of integrity meter.
What if somebody wants theirs well done?
We ask them
politely
yet
but firmly to
It
leave.
is well documented that Trump likes his steaks well done.
It's my favorite food.
I'm tempted to say that this alone would be a deal breaker for Hank Hill, but the other details in Trump's failed steak business venture would easily trigger Hank also.
With great meat, son, comes great responsibility.
In one episode, Hank stopped supporting the Megalomart because their meat selection is, well, not very good. He ultimately
Dude, there's so many like non-political reasons why Hank would absolutely despise Trump, dude. Holy shit. Do you see the King of the Hill video that Dubas Goobas made? No, I haven't. Maybe I have, but I'm not remembering it right now.
ends up shopping at and even helping run a co-op, a place filled with people that he has very little in common with. People that live away.
The show also has like bizarrely progressive episodes too, like where Hank accidentally realizes co-ops are based. And he doesn't find out it's like lefty hippie shit until like later, and he's like, whoa, how do I get the best steak I've ever had here for the cheapest price I've ever paid for a cut of meat? He just can't understand. He doesn't get it.
of life that he doesn't really understand. But they got their meat from a small farm that treats their animals well. They farm with integrity.
Integrity Farms.
This entire episode revolves around not letting big corporations ruin the integrity of the meat. And then there's the whole issue of where Trump steaks were sold.
And the Sharper Image is the only store where you can buy them.
What?
Oh yeah, Hank Hill would definitely support the guy who sold overpriced shoebox
What is the
steaks
Sharper
at a gimmicky
Image?
electronics store. Very Hank Hill. But there's
What? Trump steaks were sold at electronics stores? What? You're telling me there was like a fridge or a freezer where you could buy Trump steaks at some obscure line of electronics stores I've never heard of before? That must have been part of some, like, brand deal he did or something. Some exclusive brand deal for an easy buck. There's no way. What?
that Hank believes in above all else.
I sell propane
That's right. Propane.
and propane accessories.
And propane accessories. And
Can't forget
there's
the
one thing
accessories.
that Hank despises above all else.
You brought charcoal into
Coal
our
into my
house.
home.
One of the many things Trump has fought for is the coal industry. The dude is very pro-coal.
My administration is putting an end to the war.
Yeah, that's interesting because, like, Hank's whole thing is about natural gas. Coal and charcoal aren't the same thing. Well, they are, but they're not at the same time. Like, charcoal briquettes are like wood burned into the point of being just pure lumps of carbon, while coal is like carbon that's been compressed into lumps of carbon. And you don't usually use straight up coal for grilling, but you'll use charcoal briquettes or like charred wood. It's been made into wood charcoal for it. Not the same thing, but it is burning carbon for like fuel. I don't know if Hank would be against that in general. Yeah, I mean, Kamala Harris and Biden going after the coal industry, you could actually argue would be a reason why Hank would vote for Kamala, because they're axing the coal industry. If Trump wins, then all of their policies, all their bills get undone day one, as he's promised.
War on coal.
He fucking loves coal.
It's my favorite food.
Coal doesn't exactly burn clean like propane does. Unless you ask Trump.
Gonna have clean coal. Really clean coal.
Honestly,
He invented
I'm
that, by
kinda
the way.
baffled that this
That's one of Trump's like patented invented terms, like immigrant crime. When he made up that term, clean coal is another thing he made up and just kept repeating because he just does that, and it just works. No further explanation needed. He just makes shit up.
This is even a question. Is Hank conservative? Yes. That's the whole conceit of the show. The entire formula of King of the Hill is that Hank is an incredibly uptight, conservative, old school, all-American kind of guy. That guy is then confronted by a changing world that scares him, and the humor stems largely from his discomfort of being faced with those situations. But usually,
The big question is going to be, will a modern take on this be good? Because it feels like it's going to be really hard to engage with like modern day progressive concepts in a satirical way like King of the Hill does without dipping into like anti-woke territory, you know what I mean? Because it feels like so much of the conservative psychopathy over like the changing times these days is a parody of Hank Hill. I honestly wouldn't. How crazy would it be if Hank is in the new show more put off by modern conservatives than like the changing times becoming more progressive? That would be a really cool way to subvert expectations for the new show. That like conservatives have gotten so crazy and weird that he can't vibe with either like the changing times or with the counterculture to it. He feels completely isolated in that way. That would be an interesting way to deal with it. That would be a good way to handle it, I think.
Hank ends up actually learning something new from these scary new situations and confrontations. Does it change his opinion entirely? No, typically not, but he learns to empathize and understand things that he didn't before. Often because he finds some sort of underlying integrity behind the way of life that he didn't understand. That's what the show is. Hank is often willing to admit that even though an idea confused or scared him, he can at least accept and understand why other people might feel that way.
Yeah,
It's the
he
best
typically grows
steak
as a
I have
person.
ever eaten.
Now, I'm not going to pretend Hank would have voted for Hillary Clinton, but there's no way in hell he would have voted for Donald Trump. And if you want me to just cement the issue here, here's a couple tweets from a guy named Randy Rice. Randy tweeted, "My wife asked Mike Judge himself at a King of the Hill Q&A if Hank would have been a Trump supporter. He said, and I quote, 'There's no f***ing way he would have supported Trump.' Technically, yeah, this is hearsay, but there's enough evidence to support that he's not lying."
If that's real, that's pretty big.
In 2019, Randy tweeted something with the same sentiment about a King of the Hill Q&A, and in 2017, he tweeted that he was at the King of the Hill 20th anniversary show at San Francisco Sketchfest. A quick Google search confirms that the same date he tweeted this, there was indeed a King of the Hill 20th anniversary table read where Mike Judge and much of the cast were present. Sounds pretty credible to me. All right, look, I know the comment section for this video is going to be an absolute nightmare, so I'm just gonna say right off the bat, I don't think I'm gonna respond unless...
I honestly, like, it is impossible to prevent political arguments in a comment section. If people can communicate, they will argue about politics, especially these days. I love, as like, just to prove to myself how impossible it is to avoid getting hate on the basis of politics, regardless of who you are or what you do online. I'll look up the most innocuous shit I can. I'll Google kittens in a basket, puppies playing, baby's first word. Just like things, I'll sit and I'll think of the most positive, lovely things that one could engage with or see. And then I look at the like to dislike count with the that add-on. I look at the comments and I sort by newest to see like the most deranged newest comments that haven't had any engagement. And there's always people arguing about politics. Somehow they get it to that point. There's always a ton of dislikes for some reason, even on the most innocuous and just delightful stuff. Like, it'll be puppies and kittens playing, 5,000 dislikes out of 1 million views, right? Because out of any large selection of people, there's just a surprising amount of, I'm just going to say it, mental illness. He could have, like, Johnny Two Chillos could have uploaded a video, puppies and kittens playing, and there would be people tearing each other apart in the comments about politics. It would take as much as someone mentioning a TV show that is considered woke, and the comments will explode in a political argument. That's all it takes. That's just one way it could devolve in that direction. I've seen it happen countless times.
Unless it's just strictly King of the Hill based, I'm super down to talk about King of the Hill because I love King of the Hill. But if this is gonna just turn into a political free-for-all in the comment section, I'm out. I'm not gonna be there. I'm glad I had an excuse to talk about King of the Hill.
It's my favorite food.
It really blows my mind that people think Hank would have been a Trump guy. It's kind of offensive. This notion that Hank would pimp out his integrity to vote for a guy who vaguely supports his political leanings.
From now on, the only woman I'm pimping is Sweet Lady Propane. And I'm tricking her out all over this town.
If you like this video, do me a favor, stick around. I do lots of cartoon breakdowns, and honestly, if you want more King of the Hill content, let me know. I love this show.
God. No, Hank Hill is legitimately more powerful than Thanos. Like, I think Hank could probably hold an Infinity Stone. Physically. Like, I think he could hold, like, 7 Infinity Stones and be fine. Hank Hill is genuinely just insane. He is overpowered as fuck. Yeah, his weakness is his narrow urethra and his flat ass. The internet's going to yum yuck the reboot? You think so? Zan, check out that last Stono. It's related to the segment. Also good segment. Oh, Alexia, thank you for the $5. I appreciate that. Very kind of you, as always. Said, here's the Dubus Goobus video, and then linked it. Let's see this.
Now, Bobby, it took a lot of time for me to come to terms with this furry
I've seen this one.
business you're involved in. But if I must make a suggestion of this lifestyle, you should try making your little identity a tiger. It is a strong animal with many benefits and strengths. The tiger is mighty among the animal kingdom for...
Actually, Dad, I wanted to be a gopher.
You're gonna be a gosh dang gopher over a tiger? Whoa!
They're cute.
No self-respecting son of mine is gonna identify as a weak little gopher.
Gophers are actually nature's greatest killers. They put you in a false sense of security, but then they go up your bum and rip out your chest cavity like in Aliens. That movie was based on multiple presidential assassinations that were listed as Heart attacks. Bunch of hooey.
Dale, don't indulge him. That's a load of crap. I mean, even if that part's not true, Hank, you gotta admit gophers have a cute little face.
The impressions
I
are
like
so
them
good.
myself. Bill, your opinion matters even less. I mean, your mom, but you know, tigers are going extinct, man. You gotta understand. Like, the tigers aren't doing so good. They don't breed with each other. They don't hang out. Now, you're gonna see the golfers. They're everywhere, man. You're going to the golf course, man. They're everywhere.
They're all
over the place.
defending Bobby.
But, man, the tiger's gonna be gone long before the golfer. The golfer's gonna survive a long, long time. Oh. Well, if that is the rule of democracy, I shall respect it. On second thought, I now hate democracy.
God, it's such a good video. I love Dubus Goobus, man. I love that man. He is a genuine treasure. What a lovely man. I love Dubus Goobus. I hope I get to meet him and give him a hug one day. Anyway. If you enjoyed this segment, please consider leaving a like. It really does help a lot. If you don't know, someone actually brought up an example in chat earlier I really liked, where they said they went to one of my old videos, like an old video that doesn't really get a lot of traffic anymore, and they watched it and left a like. And they came back to it like later that day and saw that it had multiple new comments for the first time in like months and months. Just because they were the first person to engage with that old video in a long time, their single like resulted in enough new people watching that video that it got several new comments. So keep that in mind. It really does mean a lot, and it's totally free. No matter when, where, or what you're watching, I really appreciate the likes. Seriously, guys, thank you. It means a ton. And of course, if you want to see more from me and support the channel, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video. And of course, follow my social medias linked down below in the description if you want to see more from me on other platforms too. And join my fan Discord if you want to be notified when I go live or upload new videos and be a part of the main hub of my community. There's a link down below in the description to join. And finally, if you want to support me directly, financially, help me keep a roof above my head and the lights on, consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me financially through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, or Patreon, or buying merch to the Streamlabs link down below. But regardless of how you support the channel, thank you so much. It really means a lot. Thank you, and have a good one.